Beneath San Francisco's Chinatown lies a hidden world. Rumors of forbidden tunnels, smugglers, secret halls, escape doors bricked up and forgotten. And here's the twist. Old police reports and newspapers from the 1800s actually mention these passages. Most are sealed now, but not all. Tonight, I'll show you what still hides under these streets. And as a small channel on the road to 1,000 subscribers, I'd be so grateful if you hit that subscribe button. It truly means the world to me. This isn't just a ghost story, it's a story of survival. A story about how an entire community was forced into the shadows, sometimes literally underground because of racism, exclusion, and fear. So stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll see Chinatown not just as a lively neighborhood filled with food and culture, but as a place standing on top of forbidden passageways that tell one of the most untold stories of resilience in American history. To understand the mystery of Chinatown's tunnels, you first have to understand the history of the community that lived above them. When Chinese immigrants first began arriving in San Francisco during the gold rush of the mid-1800s, they dreamed of opportunity, but instead of being welcomed, they faced hostility. Anti-Chinese laws, discriminatory taxes, and violent attacks made life in America anything but easy. By the 1880s, the Chinese Exclusion Act made it nearly impossible for Chinese laborers to enter the country legally. As the pressure grew, so did the isolation. In San Francisco, the Chinese community was pushed into a small, crowded district, what we now know as Chinatown. Above ground, their lives were watched, restricted, and often threatened. But below ground, another story was taking shape. Rumors spread of hidden passageways and rooms dug beneath the streets and buildings. Some historians argue that many of these so-called tunnels were actually just interconnected basements, linked together over time. But to the people who lived in Chinatown, these spaces were more than basements. They were safe havens. Imagine being in a community where police raids could storm into gambling halls or opium dens at any moment, or where angry mobs might flood the streets outside. An underground passageway meant escape. It meant survival. And the need to survive wasn't just about crime or vice, it was about dignity. Discrimination forced many everyday aspects of life underground, from work to recreation. These hidden spaces became an answer to a world that refused to make space above ground. The city itself fed the legend. Old newspaper stories described secret doors leading to labyrinths beneath Chinatown. Police reports mentioned chasing suspects who vanished into tunnels. Even tourists were drawn in by the whispers of a forbidden underworld beneath the busy markets and shops. Were these tunnels fact or myth? That's the question that would echo for more than a century. But one thing was clear. Chinatown's underground, whether real or exaggerated, was a direct reflection of the struggles happening above ground. Because when a community is forced into the shadows, sometimes those shadows become real. If you ask 10 different people about Chinatown's tunnels, you'll likely get 10 different answers. Over the years, these underground passages have become the center of endless speculation, part fact, part legend, and part mystery. One of the most common theories is smuggling. During the years of the Chinese Exclusion Act, it was nearly impossible for Chinese immigrants to legally enter the United States. Yet thousands still found their way into San Francisco. Many believe the tunnels were used to secretly move people and goods into the city, bypassing the watchful eyes of officials. For a community locked out of opportunity, smuggling wasn't a crime, it was survival. Another theory focuses on gambling halls. Gambling was hugely popular in Chinatown, but it was also illegal and regularly raided by police. Underground tunnels and hidden rooms gave operators a way to keep games running in secret. If the police came knocking, a quick escape into the dark passageways could mean the difference between freedom and arrest. Then there are the darker whispers, opium dens and prostitution. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, opium use was both criminalized and sensationalized. Newspapers painted Chinatown as a place of vice and corruption, fueling racist stereotypes. Hidden dens underground fed the myth, shadowy rooms filled with smoke, beds, and figures disappearing into passageways. Whether exaggerated or not, these stories cemented the idea that Chinatown was hiding a secret underworld. Another theory suggests the tunnels weren't just for illicit activity, they were for protection. In the late 1800s, anti-Chinese riots and violent mobs terrorized immigrant communities. If violence broke out on the streets, underground passageways could provide a quick escape. For many, the tunnels weren't about crime, they were about staying alive. Of course, some historians argue the mystery has been blown out of proportion. They believe what people call tunnels were really just connected basements and storage spaces, exaggerated over time by rumor, racism, and sensationalist reporting. And yet those same historians can't fully explain the bricked-up doors, the sealed stairways, and the occasional strange passage found beneath buildings in Chinatown, even today. So which theory is true? The answer might be all of them. Smuggling, gambling, opium, escape routes. It's possible the tunnels served different purposes at different times. What's certain is that they became a symbol of a community forced into the shadows. Whether myth or reality, the forbidden tunnels of Chinatown tell us one undeniable truth. When a society pushes people underground, they find ways to survive. Underground. Legends can grow wild over time, but Chinatown's tunnels weren't just born out of imagination. Scattered throughout history, there are accounts, some official, some whispered, that suggest the tunnels were more than just myth. One of the strongest pieces of evidence comes from old police reports and newspapers. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, San Francisco journalists wrote sensational stories about Chinatown's hidden underworld. They described officers chasing suspects into buildings only to find that they had vanished through trapdoors and hidden staircases leading below. Some reports even mentioned bricked-up passageways discovered during raids. Residents, too, passed down stories. Some elders claimed to have walked through dimly lit corridors beneath Chinatown in their youth. Others recalled entrances hidden in basements that connected one building to another. These stories, told over generations, became part of Chinatown's oral history. A reminder that even if the tunnels are sealed now, they once held meaning. There's also physical evidence. Renovations in Chinatown have occasionally revealed strange underground structures. Sealed-off rooms with no clear purpose, bricked archways that lead to nowhere, or narrow hallways abruptly cut off. To some, these are smoking guns. To others, they're simply remnants of basements in a crowded district. Still, the mystery lingers. Why would so many of these structures exist, if not for something more? Perhaps the most convincing clues lie in the timing. When the Chinese Exclusion Act was in full force, illegal immigration and underground economies thrived. Smuggling routes had to exist, and it's not hard to imagine tunnels playing a role. Meanwhile, police raids on gambling and opium dens were so frequent that an escape network would have been invaluable. The tunnels fit perfectly into the story of survival during those times. Even today, guides who lead walking tours through Chinatown point to blocked doors and basements and alleyways. They say, that used to go somewhere. Whether it's myth, memory, or truth, visitors can see with their own eyes that something unusual lies beneath the surface. Of course, skeptics argue that eyewitness accounts can be unreliable, and newspapers of the time often exaggerated stories about Chinatown to feed racist stereotypes. But here's the thing, myths don't appear from nowhere. They usually start with a seed of truth. And that's the haunting part of this story. Somewhere between myth and memory lies reality. And the tunnels, whether fully real, partly imagined, or long buried, remain a powerful symbol of what life in Chinatown once was. Hidden, dangerous, and resilient. Why were Chinatown's tunnels so secret, so hidden, and eventually labeled as forbidden? To answer that, we need to look at the pressures the community faced above ground. For much of the late 1800s and early 1900s, Chinese immigrants in San Francisco lived under constant suspicion. Newspapers portrayed Chinatown as a place of vice and corruption, exaggerating stories about gambling, opium, and crime. Politicians used these fears to justify harsh laws, while police conducted frequent raids. To survive, many activities, legal or not, were forced underground. That secrecy became part of daily life. The tunnels, whether real or exaggerated, symbolized a community pushed out of sight. If you wanted to gamble, you went underground. If you wanted to escape a raid, you fled through hidden doors. If you wanted to move goods or people without attracting attention, the shadows were safer than the streets. Over time, though, secrecy turned into stigma. Stories of tunnels became twisted into legends of danger, fuel for outsiders who already feared Chinatown. Instead of seeing the underground world as a form of resilience, many saw it as proof of crime. The very same passages that once offered protection were now portrayed as sinister, shameful, and forbidden. Even within Chinatown, silence grew. Speaking openly about tunnels was discouraged. parents warned their children not to wander or ask questions. The tunnels became more than physical spaces. They became taboos, reminders of both necessity and trauma. And as San Francisco modernized, the city itself tried to bury the past. Earthquakes, fires, and redevelopment sealed many of the suspected tunnels. Others were bricked up, erased from maps, or simply collapsed over time. But the label remained, forbidden. Not because the tunnels were just a myth, but because they represented something outsiders weren't meant to see, how a community built its own hidden world in the face of exclusion. The truth is, the tunnels were never just about crime. They were about survival, and survival in a hostile world sometimes had to stay hidden in the dark. Today, Chinatown looks very different from the one that gave birth to its underground legends. Tourists walk Grand Avenue snapping photos of lanterns and tasting dim sum. Families shop in markets, and elders play cards in the parks. On the surface, it's vibrant and full of life. But beneath it all, the whispers of tunnels still linger. Some say most of them were destroyed after the 1906 earthquake and fire, when much of Chinatown was rebuilt. Others believe many were simply sealed off, bricked behind walls, hidden under new foundations, or left to collapse over time. Renovations in the neighborhood still occasionally uncover odd features. Staircases leading to nowhere, sealed arches, or empty rooms with no clear purpose. To many, these are hints that the tunnels never fully disappeared. Whether the tunnels exist today in usable form or not, their legacy remains powerful. They continue to shape the way outsiders view Chinatown, sometimes with fascination, sometimes with fear. For the community, the stories are more complicated. They're not just tales of hidden crime, they're stories of resilience, secrecy, and survival. The tunnels remind us that history doesn't always sit in plain sight. Sometimes the most important stories are buried, literally, beneath our feet. And that brings us back to the central question. What really lies beneath Chinatown? And why was it hidden for so long? The answer is both simple and haunting. What lies below is the truth of a community forced underground, where survival meant secrecy. The forbidden tunnels of Chinatown may be part fact, part legend, but their meaning is undeniable. They tell the story of a community forced into the shadows, where secrecy was the only path to survival. Some say the tunnels are gone. Others believe they still exist, sealed beneath the city. So here's the question for you. Do you believe the tunnels under Chinatown were real escape routes, or just exaggerated legends, and why? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story made you think, hit like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more hidden histories revealed.